Obviously, nobody's going to invest in a business that's going through a pivot, that it requires large amounts of capital when the founder is saying, I don't know when I can re-enter the United States. It's just not a very investable business. It was a real crisis moment, right? Because we were going to run out of cash. It just felt like, we've put in 4 or 5 years of effort. We know there's something here. We just have to find a way out of it. This week, we'll do more in revenue than we did in the first 4.5 years of the prior business, right?
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Handbook podcast, where we share inspiring startup stories with practical takeaways for you, the listener. Today we have with us Rohan Deuskar, who's the founder of Stylitics. They're an outfitting and bundling technology used by about 150 of the world's largest retailers. How are you doing today, Rohan?
I'm great, Amardeep. Thanks so much for having me.
So for the audience back home, we actually did this before once, but we had a few technical problems. So we're here again. But you've got such an interesting story of where your startup came to today. So I'm going to make you repeat it for me again. So what made you become an entrepreneur in the first place? Like, where did you get on this path that you are now?
I've always wanted to create something. I had this philosophy from when I was a little kid, just, try to create something in the world that's going to outlast me. And I had that not because I had some grand visions or grand ego as a little kid, but I just love to read, and I realized that half the books I'm reading are from people who are not alive anymore, and I'm encountering their work and enjoying it so much, and it just seemed like an amazing thing. And so most of my childhood I actually wanted to be a writer, and I focused a lot on that. Somewhere in college, after I came to the US, I think I lost my way and sort of thinking about startups and started thinking about how to create something in the real world in the short amount of time. Maybe I just lost the discipline to write. So right out of undergrad in Chicago, I went and joined a 5-person startup called Vibes Media, and was just immediately in love with the process of seeing and helping that company go from about 5 people to 100 people, and learning a ton of lessons from the founders and from the team around me along the way over 5 years. And so that sort of lit the spark, I think. Sadly, my writing days are at least on hold, a multi-decade hold, but the startup bug was sort of pretty, took hold pretty strongly. And then I went to business school for a couple of years. And while I was there, I actually had an amazing internship and an opportunity to go work for Amazon on the Kindle team with a great manager. This door was wide open. They fortunately invited me to come back. They even said, go and work at this secret lab environment for this futuristic stuff. And it was very, very tempting. But I just, I thought a lot about it, and I was in my second year of business school. And I just thought to myself that, if I think forward 4 or 5 years, would I personally rather be like a senior product manager at Amazon, which by the way, they're great and that's a great role, or will I feel in that moment that I should have done something, should have tried something on my own, and I just didn't want to have that regret. So kind of a regret, minimization framework that I forget who's popularized, but that's how I thought about it. I said, on a random Tuesday in 4 years, which will I think I feel more gratified by starting something or working in a big company. And so I took this road. And so that was 12 years ago. You should not look at Amazon's stock price for the options I would have gotten. But I mean, I'm sort of at now.
You haven't done too badly on your own stock either, so.
I think it's okay now, but
because that's what I know, right? Is that obviously it's been going for 12 years, but it's not what the company is today. Like when you started.
That's right.
And what was the initial idea, and then we'll move on to the pivot. Like once we go through that idea to begin with.
The original idea came from me having this experience of just buying the same types of clothes all the time. And I go to the store, I buy 3 or 4 shirts, I come back and I look in my closet and I just say, wow, these look exactly the same as what I already had. Or I would just wear a small subset of things and I wouldn't really explore the depth of my closet, or I'd forget the stuff I had in the back, that kind of thing. And it just occurred to me, maybe because I just come from Amazon, or maybe just because we were in an environment back then where there was so much fitness tracking apps and other things. There's sort of the measured self was at its nascency. I said, I wish my closet had a brain in it. I wish I could track it would track what I was wearing. It could make outfit recommendations. It could tell me how often I was getting use out of different things. When I was out shopping, I could pull it up and see what I had, so I'm not buying the same thing because I just forgot, and so on. There was lots of those benefits as a consumer. And so that was the original idea, which is the digital closet platform. But we didn't feel that we had the funding or the ability to raise funding or the experience to build like a consumer platform. And so we said, what if we have it be a smaller use case and for hardcore users, or try to create a panel out of it and then anonymize and analyze that data and help brands and retailers understand what's in the closet of your shoppers. So that was the long way of explaining it, but that's the original idea. And that's actually what we pursued for about 4 or 5 years. And we raised about $4 million in drips and drabs.
Yeah, because it's quite a big difference of what you're doing now. Because obviously, when you talk about the idea initially, it kind of makes sense of like why it's something which people need. Like we always wear the same clothes over and over again. But I guess before you move on to the pivot, like why didn't the initial idea work out?
So it's funny. It's funny because this idea of a digital closet in your pocket, and we were, if not the first, amongst the very first to do it. It did take off. That's what kept us going for 4 years. I mean, the first even 2 or 3 years, we were profiled in the New York Times multiple times, profiled in the Wall Street Journal, listed on the cover of Wired magazine, morning shows, like all over the place. I think the app hit in the top 10 ranking in multiple countries at various points in time. There were even points where, through a sort of a partnership we did with the CFDA, we were getting tweets from like Kardashian and other people like that, right? All with a bootstrap. There was no marketing budget behind all of this or PR budget behind all of this. And if you look at the usage, people loved tracking their wardrobes. They loved, and it was fairly frictionful. They would have to take photos of their clothes. They'd have to hang it up. We didn't have some of the tech we even have now in different use cases to help them with that. And but they could build outfits. They could put it on a calendar. It would analyze their wardrobe. It would look at cost per wear. So people loved it. And it actually got to a point where there were over 1 million items were being added by everyday people every year. And it was sort of going up from there. So very attractive from a consumer platform concept, I think early traction. The challenge was it was completely free and we had no ads. And so zero in revenue from that side of the business, right? And so even though we were getting all these customers, it was sort of not contributing any revenue because the business model was to say, let's analyze all of that data, aggregate it, and provide insights to retailers. And even though we were able to sell, packaged up, anonymized, trended data to a lot of retailers, it's, now I look back and there were 2 major things that I think we didn't realize at the time. Number one, selling one-off reports is just not a very good business because you're always having to sing for your supper again. It's not subscription. It's not recurring revenue. And also, we went very quickly from a moment where there was not enough data accessible to retailers to almost in 12 months, too much data. Our product was not that interesting anymore. And the other thing is, it's just very, very difficult to kind of, as I think about it, climb 2 mountains at the same time. I mean, it's impossible to climb 2 mountains at the same time. And we were climbing this mountain of building a popular consumer app and also trying to build a B2B business with a 15-person team that was generally inexperienced in either one. So it was very compelling parts of it, something very real in the value for shoppers and consumers, but not a good business.
And then obviously what you've done now is a much better business. And where did that pivot come from? So you were realizing that this isn't working out in terms of the business sense, what you first did. Where did the idea come from for what you do now?
Yeah. So, just to put it in context, since you said this is a better business. Yeah. I mean, this week we'll do more in revenue than we did in the first 4.5 years of the prior business, right? And so I think we're definitely in a better place than we were. I mean, maybe today we'll do more revenue than. So certainly it was the right move to pivot. The pivot was not. While we knew that we wanted to shift the business, and at this point, Zach had kind of left the company for a few years, and he's come back in now. So it was me kind of running it solo with this 15-person team at the point. And it's irrelevant because what happened is, while we were thinking about pivoting completely to the consumer side and growing that and making maybe having other business models behind it. I was in the process of getting a new visa put into my passport. I'm not a US citizen. Now I have a green card, but back then I was on visas. And in that process, I went to Dubai for a week. My parents happened to live there. Went to the US consulate to get this visa on my passport. And for a reason that I still don't understand to this day and nobody knows, I just got put into something called administrative processing, which is like a kind of like a black box global background check queue or something. Again, it's very ill understood. And they basically, the upshot of it was that, people typically can't re-enter the United States, not even live. You can't even go back until this is cleared. And the wait times were typically 1.5 to 2 years. And so what happened is I was supposed to be there for a week. I ended up getting stuck there it turned out to be about 6 months. And we thought it would be multiple years. And I had a bag of my clothes for that one week, and an apartment. I had a girlfriend, now my wife. And it was just a giant shock to the system, because we had about like 9 months we had about 5 months of runway, and I was beginning, raising funds towards building a consumer first platform as a solo founder at that point. Obviously, nobody's going to invest in a business that's going through a pivot, that it requires large amounts of capital to go out and, do a traditional, B2C model, when the founder is saying, I don't know when I can re-enter the United States. Like, it's just not a very investable business. It was a real crisis moment, right? Because we were going to run out of cash. Our revenues were minimal, as I mentioned. And even though the consumer side was really popular, it just couldn't sustain itself. That was the trigger for why to shut down was the actual path, right? It was like our investors were all wonderful, frankly, and said, listen, we understand this a bad circumstance, even though many of them put in 7 figures at that point. If you need to shut it down, we understand. That just didn't feel like the right end of the story for me. It just felt like, we've put in 4 or 5 years of effort. We know there's something here. We just have to find a way out of it. Just to fast forward a little bit, what I ended up doing is I had this idea for using outfitting and styling at scale, finally getting to what we actually do as a company, right? There was a part of the platform that was an outfit builder, and it was for consumers. And I'd kind of learned my lessons, and I said that, look, if we know the consumers love this area, we also had retailers who were very interested in the outfitting side of things and the closet sides of things, and it kind of approached us saying, can we white label this? And we weren't set up for white labeling, but that kind of started to trigger some thinking. And then I was staying in my parents' place in Dubai. So I went over and talked to my mom and I said, hey, if as a shopper, if you saw outfit recommendations like you might see in the magazine, like editorial style that showed you, hey, you're looking at a particular jacket and it shows you multiple ways and multiple occasions of how to style the jacket. Do you think that's going to be helpful to you as a shopper? My mom's very sort of smart and savvy lady, and she spent like 30 minutes telling me why, like as a shopper, it was a great help and be so helpful in all these ways. And so, N of 1, but still I was like, okay, there's something real here. Instead of shutting down the business, what we did is I stopped taking salary. I did a few things to kind of clean me out personally from a personal finance perspective. Unfortunately, did have to let go of 13 out of the 15 people on the team to have a skeleton crew, and hard pivoted to this area. Right, just complete hard pivot. One day we were the digital closet app. The next day we were outfitting and styling. At that point, light on the technology, but technology for brands and retailers. And I was able to convince our amazing, early investors to collectively give me $165,000 after raising $4.5 million previously, saying, I'm not going to pay myself. We'll be very lean. I think there's something here, and let's just go for it. And, from like pitching them on the phone call, like on a bad connection from my parents' kitchen to like conference call in the US. And so I said, I don't know when I'll be able to come back, but I think I can make this work. And they, frankly, they sort of took another swing at it with me. And frankly, the $165,000 now is worth like tens of millions of dollars, I think. So hopefully they're feeling good about that. But that's how we pivoted into what we're doing now. And now, of course, we have 200 million shoppers across the world using this, and it is a new category we've created. So it's been a long journey, but it's been pretty gratifying.
In that point when you Dubai and you had to let go of 13 of your staff, you had like 165K to try and get this off the ground. Like, how did you feel inside yourself at that point? Do you think like this is something that's going to work out, or did you have a lot of self-doubt? Like, how did you kind of control your emotions at that point? Because even from a personal perspective, you being trapped in Dubai and not knowing when you're going to go back to America, it must have been quite a stressful time for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. It was a very stressful time. I couldn't even stay in Dubai because I'm an Indian citizen, so I had a 30-day visa. So I actually got double exiled. I had to leave the UAE and go back to India and like live out of an Airbnb with the no money I had. So it was certainly a stressful time. I think to your point about mindset, I've thought a lot about that, and now I look back and frankly, it's even amazing to me. I mean, I've always been a get back up and optimistic kind of person, but at that moment, I think about what was going around me, and friends were saying, come over and work at Facebook. You can, like, instead of having $0 in the like, and they'll sort out your visa for you. Like, there were just so many temptations on the sides. And, obviously family and parents kind of worried about what's going to happen and all of those things. So it's certainly a very stressful time. I think two things, deeply helped me, or three things. And if I ever talk with a friend or a founder who's going through startups, it's kind of the things I highlight in case it helps them. So number one was this, like, I just started picturing, what if I said, in 2 years from now, I'm going to be saying this was the best thing that ever happened, right? So I kind of just said, let me just convince myself as a given, in 2 years, I'll be walking around saying, it was a tough time, but that was the best thing that ever happened. And I just started saying this to myself. It was the best thing that ever happened. And what it kind of did for me, that like one piece of the puzzle, and made me think about, instead of this being the worst thing that's ever happened, which at that moment, it was amongst the worst things, professionally, certainly the worst thing, that this is the best thing that ever happened. So I sort of got this picture in my mind about between now and 2 years from now, a set of things will happen, or I'll need to do a set of things that allows me to be able to say that. That's piece one of the puzzle. The second was, as I said, I read a lot. And so, and I screenwriting classes and things like that. And one of the things that is a classic, structure of a sort of 3-act structure of a movie, I mean, it's an almost universal approach, is that it's what's called the hero's journey. Like, Joseph Conrad, I think, or others have kind of popularized that phrasing. But it's this idea that, stuff's going fine, and then for the main protagonist, there's something really, really bad happens, especially after things have been going well for a while. And most of the story is about how they recover from it. And the way they become a hero is how they recover from that. And in my mind, I just like, okay, what if this is not the conclusion of the movie or the book, but this is actually the inciting factor that creates the story, like creates, how I respond to this is what. So instead of it feeling like the closing of the chapter, the end of the story, if it felt like the end of the second act, or like the beginning of the second act, it just reframed it. Frankly, it just reframed it, and it took me into the parts of me that work well, which is like, okay, let's problem solve, let's brainstorm, let's figure out how to get out of this, and like that kind of thing. So one was just that mindset changing was so essential. And, I just think that if I hadn't had that mindset and kind of almost forced that mindset for myself, frankly, the next, even though I got back 6 months later, it took another year and a half of being in this, like, like in the doldrums to get enough of a glimpse that this thing is going to work. Right. And at that point, people were, well-wishers were like, okay, you did this pivot. It's been a year and a half and it's still like, it's still not, you're seeing early growth, but like, are you sure kind of thing? And I proposed when I got married, I had never pictured myself, getting married with after a good MBA and a good career, having almost no money in my bank account. It was just to kind of stay with it. Because I could picture myself on this journey, I think it gave me just enough of a grip onto what was to come to kind of have that persistence. Now I look back and I'm like, wow, the rational thing would have been probably to pull the ripcord. And so those are the two pieces. The third piece, though, which I think is an essential component, is as soon as I had a very strong sense of what was going to be the future of the business, I got re-excited about the future of the business in this direction of what we do today. And it was very clear to me what this could become. And we just pivoted super hard. And I think that if we had said, well, we're going to try to make the old stuff work, but also experiment with the new stuff and try to have a foot in both, I think we would have failed no matter what narrative I was telling myself, because it required an intense, full commitment from me and anybody else who then started to involve in this new direction to it needed every single thing we got. I don't think, 1 ounce less of sweat and effort, and we wouldn't have been here, right? So if we had been trying to look after the old thing and the new thing, it would have been impossible. So a very hard pivot, and this mindset that we are now just acting out the steps that require this to be the best thing that ever happened, as part of a typical journey that happens for people. That was the combination of things that I think worked for me and for us.
I interviewed somebody recently who said that they're a founder who, when they were getting married, their wife's parents were they're like, oh, your company's not earning your money, you're not good enough like our daughter, essentially. And that was a big driving force behind him building his company. And it he raised over 100 million as well. But the idea, obviously, the people around you, sometimes if they don't believe in you, then you can take it in two ways. And sometimes the well-wishers, right, who want you to give up because they feel like you're going to do better if you do something else. And then there's the people who feel well, you're just failing. And I guess that's always a difficult emotion to deal with, right? If people are looking at you, and I guess some of your own peers, with almost, if they're talking down to you in a way which, not intentionally, but saying are you going a bit crazy? What's going on here? And it's one of those things, how do you deal with that?
I'm very fortunate in three ways. One is there was mostly the well-wisher group. Anyone who felt that they should have, and they weren't putting pressure on me. They were just reminding me that there were other options, and that, in a way, failure was an option, and it would be fine. Hey, you're smart, you're capable, you can do other things, etc. So it was that. The second is one person who, throughout this entire thing, never once put implicit or explicit pressure on me to do anything besides what I thought was best for my wife. She just was super supportive, never looked at what the Joneses had, never did, we just had a cheerful, happy, we have it, that environment. And it was, I should really list it as number one out of number four, the list of 3 or 4 things that enabled this, because without that grounding and sort of, I think, a happy home base personally, I think it would have been, the rest of it was so miserable in parts that it would have been so easy to just go off the rails in one way or the other, or make drastic decisions. But it just, there wasn't that negativity or pressure coming from the home front. So that was a huge part of it. And of course, look, there are always people who are trying to be helpful, but we'll have dude, what are you doing? It's been 7 years now. Come on, hey, you want me to introduce you to my person here? I'm no, I'm running a business. I'm trying to do this. And also, I should say, number 5 on my list of good fortunes here is that the people who were involved in the business and who came over, our VP of technology was there from the beginning, Zach, who came back into the business, Annie, who's our chief customer officer. These are people who, made a lot of personal sacrifices in that pivot. Especially Annie and Jeremy in that period of time, going from a proper company to being the only person in an office, that empty chairs all around you, like Annie on our team did. It's when you kind of And this is one thing I really, like if I was talking to my sons or something about it, I would say, um, everything you do, I think, like if you create goodwill, if you create trust, if you treat people well, if you do those sorts of things, not that you do it because you're going to get the payoff, but you really see how critically important that accumulation of just being a decent, trying to be a decent person is. I don't understand how founders and entrepreneurs, or CEOs or leaders in general, just like, how do you like how do you be so nasty or be so aggressive with people or that kind of thing? Like, do you not expect it, that you'll ever be in a circumstance where like you just need somebody to think of you as somebody they want to help out in their turn? Like, I don't understand it. So, but to your point, like, yeah, there were a lot of voices around, but luckily most of them were positive.
Yeah, to the point you mentioned there as well. So first of all, it's lovely to hear about like first your wife, but also your team around you coming around, because like I said, there is sometimes a myth of the founder who just does everything by themselves. But part of that is, if you can be the kind of person that people want to help, that's going to get you so much further. And I've talked about this a lot recently because there's a few people I've met in recent times who they're very conscious about making people know how successful they are, and like how like they kind of treat people in a way like, I'm bigger than you, or I'm better than you. And it's just always, it's just kind of, it's funny for me in some ways, especially some people, maybe they want to come on the podcast, right? Or I'm going to ask them to come on the podcast. And then they talk about themselves like, actually, I don't really want you on anymore. And they didn't quite realize in the past, like I'm interviewing people like you, right? And look how successful your business is. But people who are maybe at an earlier stage, they've already got that ego. And it puts I think that ego puts a ceiling on your ambitions. It can get you to a certain stage, right? Having that ego, like it impresses some people, right? Some people are like, oh, they're so confident. Oh, they're so assertive. But as you interact with people, the people who actually get furthest, as like people I've talked to, they're all kind. They're all nice to people. Like I chat to people, and I say this to people as well, is that I judge people not based on how they are in the podcast. I judge them based on the before and after. Because some people be very like short with me before we start recording. We start recording and all of a sudden they're all bubbly and energetic. And it's a show, right? Whereas the people who are like that, just generally, they come across so well and I want to help them. And it's not like I'm massively powerful or anything like that. But if I feel that way, then obviously a lot of other people feel that way too. And it's such a underappreciated skill that I think founders need to think about. So if you're just kind to people, it doesn't have to have an obvious benefit to you. But like you said, like one day it might pay you back, one day it might not. But at least you'll feel good about yourself too. And talking about the second act, right? So the second act, you've got some people on board with you. You've got the skeleton crew. It took you a year and a half to get it going again. But like, how did you write that second act in terms of like, how did you get those first customers? Because I imagine when you're first pitching to companies about like your new product, and maybe they look at you up and say, oh, but you used to do this. Why are you doing this now? How did you convince those first people to like take that chance on you?
And I'm still thinking back to all this stuff, the very great points you were making about kind of your view on like this stream of humans who go through your studio and your podcast, and you see them behind the scenes. Is so interesting. So yeah, so going back to your question, you can always convince somebody to try something, right? Even these major fashion brands and retailers, there's a growing willingness from those folks to engage, and you do have to find the right person in the right moment to try something, and then for them to put code on your site and let you do the styling of their products or the bundling and outfitting of their products when you have no reputation, is a big ask. And but we were able to get a couple of brands to try it after 6 months of doing it in a very minimal way. And the nice thing about what we do is it's so clear to understand. Like when you show outfitting, styling, and bundling on your site or in your emails or across channels, by day 2, it's working, right? Because of the volume of these retailers. By month 2, you're like, listen, I've already made $1 million from Stylitics because of the revenue impact, the average order values go up, the conversion rates. So it's a very easy conversation typically from that point onwards. And so I think unlike some solutions, which are maybe, have a longer time to value or harder to prove out, you do an A/B test and you see it working, and you've had to do none of the hard parts of scaling up, styling, and bundling, etc. And you can see it. And so even going back all the way to the earliest stage, we had a Vince Camuto was the brand, and they gave us one page, and they put up outfits on that one page that we had put together for them. It's funny now because now outfits across mostly through us, but like across retail experiences or shop the room bundles and complete the look and all of that is so almost. I mean, it's so widespread now. We've kind of hit that point of the curve. But at that point in 2016, this was sort of new and innovative. And so they put this page up, and they were measuring it, and a few weeks passed, and we were checking in any data, and they're like, wait, we have to let it get to significance. And I remember the phone call super well from that person, and we were all huddled around the phone, and she said, it's really amazing. Average order values are up by 25%. And like, we put her on mute and we're like dancing around the room because like this, hallelujah, it works, And then second and third trial customers sort of saw these same responses. And then it just gave us so much confidence because we knew that this stuff works. And it still took a year and a half because, as it turns out, to go from doing it, or multiple years after that, to do it for a handful of brands and to do it for people who've been public about it that I can say, like Walmart, right? To do it at the Walmart level, or to do it for the luxury and the kids and home and kitchen and like the whole, and beauty, like doing all of those categories at scale in an ultra reliable way. That's what took many years to kind of build up and deliver in the industry. But once you get those initial proof points, that's the power I think entrepreneurs, founders have, which is you don't need much. You just need a little bit. You just need some hope to hold on to, some stats to go. And I think people saw that. And I think the other thing is, we weren't inventing a need. We were solving for an existing need that's like showing people how to style products that they want to buy. Like, you can go back 100 years and you'll see examples of people visually merchandising the dresses. That's why mannequins exist. That's why people stage showrooms. And so all we've done is take it so that instead of it requiring, thousands of hours to get you do this for like a portion of your products, you can do your entire catalog in a day, and then keep it maintained and updated and all kinds of additional cool tech and data and insights and AI. So long way of answering your question, but it's the data kind of set us free there.
I was going to say as well, like, how did you manage to keep a competitive advantage for this as well? Because obviously you started off 165K and you're building this like very complex AI technology. How did you like protect yourself so that like another company and just like, oh, okay, that's a great idea, we're going to do this now? How did you kind of keep that advantage going? And obviously now you've got now obviously it's a bit easier because you've got so many brands behind you that you're the obvious people to go to. But as that you're coming up, it must have been difficult to kind of show how you were better than other competitors.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for a long time, because we have been, we are in our opinion, we are the category. We are, people think this is some ultra expensive thing. It's not. You have many brands who can afford it pretty early on in their, life cycle. We work with big brands, but like, you don't have to be Walmart to afford this. But I think the industry didn't realize what this was or didn't pay attention. And we've almost never had a marketing team. We've almost never had PR. Like we're just spinning up a marketing team now after we're, frankly, like shockingly late in the game. We just really focused on being under the radar, delivering value to customers. And I think so if we had gone out and shouted super loudly, maybe it would have been different. That's one. The second thing is there are certain things approaches we've taken in terms of the quality of the look, how perfectly it can align to very complex brand guidelines, but using automation. Like there's a whole bunch of those things. But we've actually once counted and we said, to do this area right and at scale, not like a one-off or that kind of thing, but right and at scale, there's something like 22 to 25 separate hard challenges you have to solve if you want to do what Stylitics is doing in the market, right? You can do bits and pieces, but to do the whole thing at the same quality level. And so I think that other companies did come and have come and kind of touched on bits of this, but they've I think they picked one or two of these areas, and they haven't kind of built the wide platform to really solve. Hey, it has to be super easy to pull in product information and add attribution, and then dynamically style it and make sure that everything is in stock. And like, there's just so many of these hard challenges. And frankly, what happened is we had the luxury of time to get it all super good, and we had customers who. This is where the power of product fit, market fit comes in, right? I can't tell you how much buy-in and partnership and education we've got from our customers. It's these are literally the biggest brands and retailers in the world, but the people that we're dealing with, this is such a fundamental area that they're excited to have a good long-term partner that they were willing to help us think through things, learn with us, try new things, and all of that. So we almost feel like we've co-created this with the industry. And so those things have kind of helped us keep an advantage.
No, it's interesting. And it's, I guess now, because obviously you've proven your market, you've proven the industry, you've got these huge, massive clients. What's the vision for the future? What's the idea now? Like, where do you go from here?
Yeah, so the roadmap is pretty clear for us. First and foremost, there's a lot that we want to deliver to our existing customers. We have this amazing base of customers, and they've been such good partners. So there's a lot of innovation, there's a lot of value and data that we want to bring to them. So things like new ways to personalize the outfitting and bundling and content, and create new experiences based on personalization. So we're really excited about those sorts of features that will introduce something new to the industry, and also just help these retailers get more value out of their shoppers, and also the shoppers get more value out of the retailer. So, and I think you alluded to it before, but we've raised a pretty large round this year, about $80 million. And so a lot of and most of that's going to go to product, analytics, engineering, primarily. That's what we're super excited about. We're also looking at other channels. So we're already in email, we're in ads, we're kind of activated across the entire customer journey. But there's so much more that we could do there to make it, again, more personalized, more interesting, more educational for shoppers. So lots on the product roadmap from that perspective. And then, we're very interested in the UK market. It's a fantastic market with some really great brands and retailers, and we've spun up a team there. So coming to your neighborhood, and other parts of Europe as well, we've started to spin up some efforts. So we're excited to get in there as well. That's the sort of the short-term answer, really just focusing on personalization, just greater AI and intelligence in the system, better analytics for customers, and just some really, really good new experiences for shoppers. I think a little further out, now that's the next year or two, but a little further out, I'm personally just very interested in this idea of the shopper being surrounded by the store in a different way. And what I mean by that is to say, if you go into any retailer or brand today, let's just say online, for example, most of what you're seeing there is actually noise. It's not signal. It's irrelevant. I can go to my favorite brand's website, and the kids stuff, the women's stuff is not relevant. There's a bunch of styles that I would never wear or wouldn't suit me, and any brand that knows me and has personalization activated should know that. There's sizes that are irrelevant for me. And so, I'm very interested in exploring what happens when you can provide inspiration from that limited subset of things. So almost like here's the shopper, and then the concentric circle around them is the 50 to 100 products that, knowing that shopper in that moment, are most relevant. And then surrounding that by here's the outfits, here's the bundles, the ways to wear it, the versatility, the types of occasions, the education on what this product can do, or how it'll make you look, or what style it is in your home, like those sorts of things. And then give them the rest of the store. And having that experience with the kind of the cocoon they're in, have every touch point. What does the store experience look like when it's really that personalized? Not just with product recs, but with outfits and bundles and education and all of those pieces. There's something in that direction that we've really started to think about. And the very cool thing, frankly, is with the base of retailers that we have and the reach that we have, and the willingness that these customers have to try new things and engage, the value that they see, we can come up with something, or come up with a few things, And we can actually roll this out to 50 million shoppers, 75 million shoppers. And because we control the experience, and we can turn it on and off, and we can A/B test it, and we can tweak it across the retailer sites, we get to learn super fast. They get to learn super fast. And then we iterate on it. And so we have this amazing, I think, like almost unique, probably, opportunity to deploy innovation and new things into, the global retail space. And that's super fun. I mean, that's super exciting. And so just leaning into that and finding a way to use that machine that we've built to get to that vision that I described is pretty exciting for us.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about that, how useful that would be. Because when you go into a shop, and then sometimes you're searching around for ages just to find like the men's section, and then you find something you like and it hasn't got your size, and you just wasted 5 minutes finding it. Whereas if, like you said, they can just find that stuff for you as soon as you get in there. Like, I'd love that product myself. And we're low on time now, but you mentioned before about how you love reading so much. So I've got to ask you, like, what's one book you recommend to the entrepreneurs listening right now that would help them run their business?
There's a guy named Frank Slootman, who's very, very well-known entrepreneur, like enterprise SaaS entrepreneur. He's the CEO of Snowflake, at least last time I checked. He's got a book called Amp It Up. And I'm like 2/3 of the way into it, but I'm just bringing it up because I'm really enjoying it. It makes a case for adding, more pace, more energy, more urgency without needing to like go out and add expense and hire people. And now some entrepreneurs I think are wired that way already. And so they don't need it. But for me, I've always taken a long view of things. I've tried to I'm a little bit more of the slow and steady wins the race, even though we run super fast, we grow super fast here. And this has been interesting for me to realize other ways to create urgency, because you don't want to just kind of like push people until their limits. There's other ways to create urgency, and it starts with the mindset of the CEO. So that for me has been useful, and it's a good reminder. We keep talking about the success Stylitics is having, which we're fortunate, we certainly are. But this is a dangerous moment because you can get complacent, you can get slow, you can get lazy, and start to feel like the journey is over, right? And no, hopefully this is the first act of. Although I don't want another crisis point. So, but anyway, hopefully we're not. It's a good reminder that you got to keep up the pace.
Yeah, you're going to have the sequel, right? So there's a second act in every sequel, and it just gets bigger and bigger, right?
I don't think I can lose more hair or get more white in my beard. So let's just hope it's sailing off into the sunset somehow.
Yeah. So what I want to give you an opportunity to do is shout out like 3 entrepreneurs you've worked with, or however you know them, who you think are doing amazing work that you think like other entrepreneurs should be listening to and learning from.
I'm fortunate to know and learn from so many good ones. Yeah, so three that come to mind immediately. Natalie Mackey, who's the CEO and founder of a company called Winky Lux, or the brand is Winky Lux, which is an amazingly successful, really amazing beauty company. And in talking with her, just understanding, I think they were like Target's. I might be misstating, but I think it's like Target's Vendor of the Year last year. And the beauty category is an amazing category. It's super hard to succeed in a sustained way and at scale. You have to break into these major retailers. I know that Winky Lux is in a lot of good ones. You have to have product that people love. You have to expand your assortment. And, it's physical product that people put on their faces and on their skin. And the way she has grown that business, it's growing really well. And the kind of the fan following she has, and the way she's, I think, been able to build a business in a really tough market has been inspiring for me. Highly, and she speaks and she does other things in public. So I recommend people check her out. The other one, it's a category I know nothing about, which is the pets category. Mm-hmm. But there's a founder named Zell Crampton, also a friend of mine. And the company is called Digs. And it's amazing, right? Pet owners are super careful and fanatical about their pets, increasingly so. And Zell's brilliant idea, which is again growing super well, and is to create premium pet products. And this is not in the food category, but it's like dog. Their dog crate is amazing because it's humane, and Zell himself deeply cares about animals and pets and like deeply. So I don't think they need quality control. They have it, but like he would be the quality control because his standards are so high. And again, just hearing about how many things you have to deal with to make sure that your product is so high quality, from supply chain to like fighting for standards in other markets. And there's just a lot of stuff there. So I've been very impressed with how in that category, he's built a new brand, or it's not so new anymore, but a really compelling brand. It's like Yeti, but for the pet space. And the third one, I could actually go on now, think about it. But the third entrepreneur, this guy named Adam Schwartz. He was the founder of TeePublic, which was basically the largest art marketplace in the world, because it was coming through like T-shirts and other products that it really to build up this artist community. And what was amazing in that story, he's subsequently he sold that business and ran the parent company for a while, and now he's on to some other interesting things that I don't know if I could share. But it was I believe they bootstrapped it completely, and from the get-go they wanted to build kind of a collective. Like they looked at their employees as like people on this journey together with them, and they didn't raise outside capital, and they just built this environment where creativity could thrive, and like loyalty and being a part of the team was so amazing to watch. So I also Adam Zell, they both do a lot of speaking, and I've definitely learned a lot from them. They're completely different business categories, but it's always really helpful to see how other people in difficult markets are kind of doing it with grace and with skill. So those are three people that come to mind for me.
So like, love chatting to you today. Like, where can people listening hear more about you, hear more about Stylitics, or like, where should you send them?
So I'm as glamorous as this may sound, I feel like LinkedIn, my LinkedIn profile is where I share a lot of thoughts and announcements. I am thinking at some point about doing a little newsletter type of thing. I wish I had that to plug, but no, just follow me on LinkedIn and you'll see announcements, and I'll be able to see what people are up to. So that would be the best thing. Otherwise, stylitics.com, feel free to reach out to us there.